Welcome to the Paid Life podcast, the podcast where performance marketing meets real business growth and goals. And each podcast we uncover the current trends, challenges that brands, businesses and teams are facing within the paid media industry. I'm Dale, over 15 years experience within the paid media industry, worked across many different businesses across different industries, uncovering what strategies work, don't work, and how to accelerate business growth. For our first podcast today, we have Nathan, who has over a decade's worth of experience within search marketing, and I couldn't think of any better subject to first talk about in 2026 about how paid media and search teams should be working much closely together to uncover true performance. So welcome to the podcast, Nathan.
Thanks, Dale. Lovely to be here.
So I think what's and where's best to start is we had Google Marketing Live only last week. The amount of news, changes, trends that Google threw on us out of nowhere has taken the industry back. I'm keen to hear your thoughts about what you took from the news and the event itself.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed the event. I think there were a few big key takeaways for me. I think largely my overarching thoughts is what they were showing around conversational search, around AI mode and Gemini. It's really just a bigger acceleration of what we've been seeing over the past 2 years, to be honest. I don't think it's too much of a surprise to see how they're starting to connect AI mode interface with Gemini and AI overviews, etc. All just sort of becoming one chat interface where really it's just one unified journey now for the user. They don't need to sort of switch between the different Google search surfaces. It's all just the one interface where you're fed back the answers to all of your search queries. A lot, I think, of certainly SEOs like myself in the industry do have an element of fear around these changes, maybe feel a little bit protective of sort of some of our old ways around sort of fretting what's happening to those 10 blue links that we've always optimized for. But really, I think that's been happening now for 5 years longer, to be honest. Those traditional blue links have been getting less and less coverage in search, and different SERP features have come to light. So again, I do think it's a bit of an acceleration of what we've been seeing. And we need to really be thinking about this as an opportunity, not a threat. There's a new opportunity to be cited, to have your products referenced, your services referenced to the exact audience that are searching for it. So it's different, but it's very, very exciting.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, what you're saying there about conversational search, AI mode, it's been hitting paid media teams hard as well, that you're having to adapt, evolve pretty much weekly at the moment. There's constant updates coming out. From a paid media perspective, what we took from it is how new formats are coming out. There's new ways to target that, to actually be exposed within that conversational box at the top of Google now. So there's definitely a lot of ways that I took from the event where you can certainly see where if SEOs, GEOs, whatever you want to call them in this day and age, if they're not working closely with paid media teams and vice versa, these are the teams, brands, businesses, agencies that are actually most likely going to fail in 2026. So I think what would be good is if we start to unpack ways in which these two teams can work closer together, because I think this event that Google threw out has sort of provoked that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you hit the nail on the head around how the industry pace is just accelerating. Things are changing, weekly. We've said for years now how paid and SEO teams need to be one. And again, it's just another acceleration, another demand of us needing to speed up and get those silos broken down. So yeah, I completely agree. I think there's a lot of different ways that we can start to uncover around sort of conversational search, around Gemini-powered ads, and AI-powered ads, where SEO and paid teams can really be using each other's experience, different pieces of data, different ways of researching, and really be sitting together on this.
100%. I think, I was doing a talk around the UK 2 years ago about exactly this topic, how search and paid media should be working closer together, and it's stronger than ever, really. There's a few things that are the same, but there's also some differences. But certainly, immediately where you are going to fail is where the two teams are chasing separate KPIs, separate topical clusters, working on different landing pages. None of that seems to be in sync still, in 2026.
No, and you have to remember that we've seen for a long time now as well is Google has really blurred the lines between what's a paid ad and what is an organic search result. In years gone by, we used to talk about users maybe trusting the organic search results that much more, those having a higher CTR because they weren't pushed to be there. But Google's really starting to sort of blur those lines in making it much less clear what the paid ads are. You're going to see paid native ads within conversational search. So we're really looking more at how do we just together have kind of just total SERP domination, if you will. So both really work together, both are singing off the same hymn sheet, and both, when a user sort of searches that topic, whatever it is, that brand's relevant. It doesn't really matter whether it's a paid ad or if it's an organic search listing, because that's your brand sort of front and center on that SERP.
Definitely. Well, let's start to unpack that in a bit more detail then. So what do search engines evaluate in 2026? Has anything changed?
Well, like we said in the previous segment, a lot has accelerated and changed, and it depends on your sort of definition of a search engine as well, I guess. I guess for this purpose of this question, we're thinking about AI overviews appearing in ChatGPT, that level of optimization as well, really. I think the main distinguishing point that we have to remember is search engines, how we traditionally understood them sort of 10 years ago. They have an index of content. Crawlers will read, index it, map it against different topics. Whereas LLMs that we're sort of much more accelerating towards, they have a tendency to much more sort of interpret and predict. That's kind of how they work. Really, we are in danger of starting to dive into the whole SEO versus GEO debate that's no one will be sort of a stranger to on LinkedIn. That seems to be certainly what my feed is completely filled with at the moment. I think what a lot of people miss really is so much of what SEOs have been doing for the past sort of 25 years, however long it's been, really is still foundational to a good geo strategy. So they're fundamentally different areas, but so much of what we have been doing from an SEO perspective really enables us to do good geo. There's just that layer on top, really, to geo. I think what I would single out, the main sort of differentiation area being is the whole sort of brand entity building. That's slightly different. It's a much newer topic to what we were talking about historically with SEO. And that's not to say that we shouldn't have been looking at that previously when we were doing sort of older school SEO. Absolutely, we should have been looking at sort of Wikipedia pages. We were looking at links to category pages to tell Google sort of where our expertise is, etc. So that was very much there. But I think there's much more importance now on really clearly articulating what your business does, what the products and services are, really across the web. It's not really just looking at the website in silo anymore either, and how you describe yourself on there. LLMs are using Reddit, YouTube, all of the different social media platforms. How do customers perceive that business, etc.? And what really resonate, what of your products and services really resonate with customers as well, because that will give you much higher sort of association to that product or service in the eyes of LLMs. So I think we've started to look much more heavily into this area now. And again, really, this just comes down to what good marketing is. You may not even call it GEO. Looking at how your business is presented across all of these different platforms, that's just good digital marketing. But it seems to get called GEO nowadays. So I would say that's one of, then there's more out there. That's one of few sort of fundamental differences between SEO and GEO, and what we're sort of looking at from an organic search engine marketing perspective. for the next sort of few years, especially.
Yeah. So, I mean, all of that's interesting. There's a lot going on. Like I said, there's a lot of changes, and it's interesting if we bring it back to that whole multimedia area there, because from a paid media perspective, it's never been more important than ever to diversify your performance marketing. I mean, gone are the days where businesses can solely rely on Google ads, Microsoft ads, just Meta ads. We're seeing where businesses succeed is where it's fully integrated. They're not just relying on search ads, but they're bringing in much more creative, asset-led and asset-driven ads, from performance max, display ads, a bit more linked up social ads as well. So it's interesting how you mentioned there about Reddit and TikTok, etc. It'd be good to know how your teams and your SEOs and how you've worked with paid media teams within those areas as well. Are you seeing a better balance there?
Yeah, it's different really. Like you said, for paid teams, it's especially important as well, fundamentally because audiences have dispersed what they use as a search tool. It's no longer just Google. They're searching for content on YouTube. They're searching for that content on Reddit. Ultimately, it's because they want that understanding that other people have found this to be good content. It's a good signal to them that, okay, my other peers, vast swathes of audience have all found this to be a useful product or service. So we get that kind of validation on these other social platforms. So that's become more and more important. And these platforms have also become better at being a bit of a search platform as well, and surfacing the right content for that search. So this is why we kind of need to be everywhere. And then, like you said, LLMs now use all of those platforms to bring in their own holistic answer to something as well. I think, how we're doing things differently in terms of sort of an SEO perspective is yes, thinking about how users are searching differently across those platforms. When we sort of pull together what we historically have called a keyword research, we would extend that to the different other platforms now to understand, okay, for this topic we're trying to go for, where are the audience? We need to see, okay, do we need to double down on YouTube, or actually do we need to double down on Reddit? Where's the volume here that we need to sort of play at here? And I think as well, one of the other sort of bigger differences is we have to remember how personalized search experiences are now for every user. A lot's been made of sort of conversational search. Yes, searches will become more specific, but also all of these different platforms know everything about you. If you were to search for sort of days out or something, you kept your search long, AI knows where you are. Google certainly has always known sort of what location you're searching in. It knows if you've got kids, it knows your rough demographic. So one person searching days out would have a completely different answer to another person searching it as well. And that's an added challenge for us as well, because previously we might have just looked at, okay, which different search permutations have volume, let's go after these. But now we have to understand the audience. We have to understand who's the target market for this business. And instead of just looking at keywords associated with it, it's starting to map out different audience profiles. What are they likely to go out to enjoy doing? What are they likely to have to spend on said experience? And then if we can start to map out these audience profiles, we make sure our content is tailored to that. And then when the audience will search it, we know we're definitely, in line to be surfaced when that audience has searched for it.
Yeah, and everything you were saying there about how things are shifting and it's becoming a lot more contextual, certainly seeing that from a paid media side. I think, again, bringing this back to the very beginning, the updates from Google Marketing Live, what I took from it was that keyword targeting now is essentially, it's going to be more of a signal rather than a matter of fact as to what you're going after. I think where businesses are going to win is going a bit more broad now, because exact match hasn't meant exact match for a good while now. Broad captures quite a lot of everything, but as search, as you just mentioned, is going a lot more conversational, this is where the targeting has to pick up those longer tail conversational informational keywords as well. And is how are we going to do that? And that's from the newer campaign formats such as AI Max, Performance Max, to not only get that AI exposure but enable businesses and brands to capture those longer tail keywords as users are in the informational stage. And I guess, again, what you were referring to, that's where paid media teams could be working a lot closer with your teams, where that keyword research is, where is that intent, what personas hang around on what platforms. Yeah. The research you do fuels the same research that paid media teams have to do as well. Is the opportunity actually more on YouTube? Is it more on Reddit? Where are they making those decisions before then putting in the much more bottom of the funnel terms to move towards a transactional point of view?
Yeah, you mentioned AI Max there as one of the key ways PPC and SEO teams work together and should be working together. SEO teams have always been associated with keyword research, but I think now that conversational search has come in and there's plenty of data out there that the increase in keywords more than 6 words, 7 words, that's exponentially grown. But SEO teams are really going to struggle in getting that level of data. We know that Google Search Console has a tendency to anonymize a lot of the data that's out there, hides it from us for privacy reasons, other reasons as well. But we know that with AI Max, PPC teams have a lot of this data, have a lot of this conversational search data that SEO teams have to tap into. It's going to be a long time before we have good data on conversational search because there's going to be so many different permutations of it. And it's going to be so difficult to extract and start to map it to different volumes across all of the different tools. You know, the paid teams have that, and the SEO teams can start tapping into that now, understanding, okay, this is what's prominent in conversational search. This is what actually generates a lead or a conversion. This is its audience type, etc. You know, if you've got a strategy where the PPC and SEO team are together, the SEO team really get a bit of a leg up on this.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what you were bringing the conversation to there is that whole ICP targeting as well, and both teams really understanding who the ICP is, what stage of the funnel are they at, where are they researching, because outside of Google, a lot is changing as well, bringing it back to the creative side. Now, Meta, from a targeting perspective, is a lot more creative-led. Meta encourages campaigns now to have 5, 10, 15 different pieces of creative that speak to different personas and keep the physical targeting broad. But then it's the information we're gathering from those creative outputs that we can share with you guys. Meta's a bit of an interesting one because I'm not too sure how much work goes in with your team around Meta, even from a social perspective, talking about the whole brand identity piece, but it's been quite well known for a little while now that Meta as a platform, the number of ads live on the platform has increased by 200% over the last few years, but actually the number of users taking on the platform is only 38%. So it's becoming more and more crowded. Users are getting exhausted with ads. Frequency is high. And it's understanding that marketplace, that digital landscape, to make informed decisions that can help both teams know where they should place their focus. It's why many businesses are seeing CPCs hike up, not just on Google, but on Meta as well. And I think it's, again, what you were saying is, where is the ICP and where is the biggest opportunity and where is that intent? And it's bringing all these data points that it can only be completed when both teams are no longer working in silos.
It's a really interesting point. I wonder if you think, are Meta making a long-term mistake in terms of allowing their platforms to be so saturated with ads to the point that users could eventually get a bit turned off by the content?
Yeah, I think that's the way Meta is going. I know from an ad perspective, Meta's no longer up there in the top 3, 4, sometimes even 5 platforms where businesses want to be. Businesses are getting more savvy with ICP and understanding how saturated certain markets can be. Cool. So there's a lot of information here to digest, really, especially if we're putting ourselves in the shoes of a business owner, brand, team leader. But how are your teams at the moment working closer to my paid media team? What are you seeing on a daily basis, monthly basis that you weren't seeing 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. We touched on earlier around how, the data from AI Max can really help SEO teams, but I think that's really just sort of scratching the surface, especially when search is so personalized and results are so different for different people. And we saw from the Google Marketing Live that, Gemini ads are powered in real time as well. So there's so many different ways where the teams can be really learning from each other. I think one key way I can stick on the point around ads being powered in real time. Obviously, LLMs or Gemini need to sort of, to be able to generate that ad, they need to have an understanding of what's on the page, how that business is sort of describing itself, what products, services, how they're sort of articulated themselves. And SEO teams for a long time now have been very, very well versed in looking at web pages and creating them to be able to answer the user query properly. There's been a shift. It's no longer keyword targeting. It goes back to that point we've been talking earlier around mapping out different audience pain points and sort of less keyword data, using that to populate the content of the page. But ultimately, that's going to give Gemini the content it needs to create an ad that's going to generate the click. Don't allow LLMs to hallucinate. We know that's been a problem as well, and it's not going to sort of spit up a load of nonsense because the page is just so corporate and doesn't really describe what they actually do for which audience. That's something SEO teams have been well versed in and can really help PPC teams out. So I think that's one fundamental way. The other way is we talked earlier as well around the evolution of keyword research. PPC teams may have in the past looked to the SEO team for a keyword research. Now, again, I think we're moving on from that traditional way of exact match keyword targeting into this new world of conversational search and personalizing for the audience. SEO teams have already started to use a range of tools to be able to create audience personas, to understand, okay, if this audience person is on this platform and searches this, they're likely going to want to know about this, this, and this. They're sort of where they are in the purchase funnel is likely to be here. So SEOs have always been very, very good at producing those kind of reports, pulling together that kind of data and then making it a content brief. And I think the PPC teams are really going to want to tap into that quite a lot coming up to help reduce their own sort of CPCs, improve their quality scores, etc. And then likewise, like I said, the PPC team are really sat on an absolute goldmine for data, especially when they start rolling out AI ads. SEO teams really need this to get sort of a bit of a leg up in terms of, fast forward their strategy, because the traditional keyword tools are going to take a little while to catch up.
Yeah, and I suppose SEOs they're one step ahead, aren't they? Because your team's been trying to optimize websites, landing pages, media to be present in that and to capture that content in the AIOs. And now that ads essentially are kind of powered by the same way, they need to be leaning, and I've seen this week alone that my team are leaning more on yours to actually, how have you captured this? What content was it? How has the ICP intent been triggered for it? So I think that's definitely something that they're doing, but also encouraging brands to do a lot more. One thing I've noticed within our reporting, one metric that my team are starting to take a bit more seriously is monitoring that absolute top of the page metric. What is that percentage? Is it high? Is that keyword capturing visibility at the top? Because how they're reporting currently is because if the SEO team have found a term, topical cluster, whatever it may be, quite difficult, it's got high competition from an organic perspective, and they're struggling to capture that AIO, that's where ads, just like the good old days, can come in to now have an ad within that. And then once, your team's optimized and worked alongside my team to capture that, that's where they can switch and coordinate between themselves. So I know it's a metric that they're monitoring a lot at the moment. And I guess summarizing everything, what you were just saying, it all comes down to that intent mapping, that funnel structure. These are all documents that are no longer in silos. The teams have shared access to these documents and are working to it on a day-by-day basis.
Yeah, I think you've massively hit the nail on the head on a few points you've raised there. We're going after kind of the same machine. It's the machine that's powering the organic content as it is producing the dynamic ads in real time. It's the same sort of viewport on your mobile or desktop, where we're going to have sort of chat interfaces providing us with results. You'll see the organic content and its sort of paid ads sort of intertwined within that conversation. We're going after the same space. We're going to need the same data. It's really sort of just becoming search marketing now. We need each other absolutely more than ever. And I think you were sort of alluding to it as well, is organic have always sort of been good at sort of capturing people, maybe sort of at the awareness phase, where maybe there's sort of informational intent in their search, what's working from an SEO point of view, and then how can the paid team sort of then funnel those users through and achieve that conversion. We all need to be sort of looking at what's happening to our audience, how they're moving through the funnel, and we can control that full sort of cycle as one team.
Exactly. I'm cautious of time. What we're going to end the podcast on is just one tip each for the audience. And given that this topic is around how businesses and brands should be integrating their paid and SEO teams more within 2026, what's one key takeaway that you think brands, businesses, agencies, individuals should be doing more of to be more integrated in 2026 and beyond?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's hard to narrow it down to one, but I think if we're going to get started, it's going to sound like a boring point, but I think it can start with how we're reporting on our performance. For too long, historically, SEO teams have been reporting on keyword rankings and clicks from those keyword rankings, and that's a KPI that's fundamentally changed. We need to be looking at, like we just spoke, looking at how much real estate do we have at the top of that SERP, and it's shared between paid and organic. We need to make sure that we're the most visible brand for that topic, when it's surfaced to that audience. So if we can start talking to the C-suite around how we can have a share of search and how that ultimately influences the buying decision further down the line, as soon as we start talking that language, that opens up the doors for the teams to work together and start to break down those silos.
Brilliant advice. And I think for me personally, as you alluded to earlier, it's probably around content mapping. I think landing pages were definitely seen in siloed. Paid media teams would solely look at how can we increase the conversion rate on this page, what CTAs, what imagery, how does the content flow. SEOs were keywords, what type of information, how can we put the context there. And I think what we need now is to actually just glue those two brains together to create that contextual landing page to fuel the ads that are going to be AI generated and AI driven in the future.
Completely agree.
Well, Nathan, thanks again for being a guest on the very first Paid Life podcast. It's been a pleasure.
That's okay, and thank you for having me.
And for those listening, I hope you've enjoyed the session as much as I have and taken some valuable insight. If there's any topics or questions you'd like answered, then please get in touch. Future podcast episodes will involve a variety of representatives from different brands, agencies, businesses, so please like, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.